I'm Dr. Duke, and this is Constitution Corner. Well, Second Amendment is in the news. It's under assault again. Every time there's a shooting, it almost seems as if the left loses its mind a little bit. It doesn't matter the circumstances of the shooting, mass shooting. It doesn't matter what political party the person is. We've seen shooters on the right and the left. None of that seems to slow the momentum down. It becomes a perfect opportunity for the left to use emotion to attack the Second Amendment. And it's a good time to remind the American people about the Second Amendment. It's hard for us now with our lack of historical education. We don't teach our kids much history. Our kids no longer understand what kind of a world it was when the United States was founded. This is an interesting statistic that I've heard that people don't talk about. When the United States became a nation, when the Declaration of Independence and then the 10 years later or so, the founding of the Constitution, about 85, I've heard even as high as 88% of the world's population at that time may have existed in a slave state, which means the vast majority, almost 90% of the world's population, was living under some kind of servitude, whether actual chattel slavery or indentured servitude. And when you stop and think about that, what a global phenomenon slavery of some form was, and how few people in the history of in the whole world at that time, talking 1789, how few people actually had what we would call liberty, freedom, self-determination, the kind of opportunity that the young American nation would begin to give to people. That's a critical way to think about this. And why did the Founding Fathers incorporate a Second Amendment? They recognized very clearly that if you could not defend yourself from a rogue government, an out-of-control government, then you didn't have liberty and you didn't have freedom, and you weren't going to be able to speak your mind or practice your religion. Slavery became a much more possible thing. And let's be very clear. Most slavery in the world back in 1789 was not chattel slavery. It was governments overpowering their citizens, serfdom. Right? The idea that people were serfs and domestic servants. They were chained to their city, their villages, chained to their feudal lords. They had no freedom, and one of the reasons was because there was no private gun rights. You didn't have any way you could fight back against this kind of tyranny. The Second Amendment was put in the Constitution to protect us from government. That's why it matters, and that threat is still here. You think about how progressives want to use government to disarm the American people. Already, half-wit politicians like Beto O'Rourke, you can do so much better, Texas. Half-wit politicians like Beto O'Rourke are now arguing that he's all for a mandatory gun buyback like they have in Australia. Well, let's be clear about that. That doesn't make any sense. You can't buy back something you never owned. The federal government of the United States never owned those guns to begin with. They didn't produce those guns. They didn't manufacture them. They didn't sell them to American citizens. They never were and never have been the property of the United States government. But people like Beto want a mandatory buyback. First of all, let's talk about the language. If it's a mandatory buyback, it's not a buyback. You're not selling your guns. Your guns are being confiscated. And so it's not a mandatory buyback. It's a confiscation. And the federal government of the United States didn't create, didn't produce, didn't sell those guns to begin with. They have no right to mandatorily buy them back, as apparently Beto believes happened in Australia, did happen in Australia. And so it seems to me that when we think about the Second Amendment, when you think about politicians who are adamant about undermining our Second Amendment rights for our own good, they say, right? Can't be trusted, even though gun ownership is the safest it's ever been, that actual gun violence in America is declining from decade to decade. More responsible gun owners than ever before being responsible with their guns, using their guns to stop other criminal activities. That's not good enough. Facts and reason don't matter here. They want your guns for your own good. And remember what C.S. Lewis said. That tyrant who would take away your rights for your own good, that's a tyrant that will never be slaked, never be sated. He's never going to be happy. Lewis said, the greedy man may sometimes reach enough. He may have enough. But the man who takes away your rights for your own good can never be stopped. If they can take away your Second Amendment rights for your own good, so that you don't hurt each other? How soon before they come after the First Amendment? Because, hey, according to the progressive left, speech is violence. And if guns have to be taken because we can't responsibly handle them, then you can't responsibly have free speech either, because speech is violence. Look, let's fight back against this. Let's take a little rationality here. Let's not succumb to the emotion of the moment. And let's be statistical and let's be scientific here. And the best thing we've got going for is our Constitution. So let's honor the Constitution by understanding it. This has been the Liberty News Hour. As always, you can go to thenewamerican.com, thenewamerican.com, and jbs.org for more information on these topics, as well as for more shows.